Hi, folks. Today's episode is brought to you by one of my favorite sponsors of the program, Sunset Lake Sebede.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST for 20% off. Folks, that means you get 20% off the tinctures with melatonin, tinctures in 3 different flavors. The good night oil. I've got to order more of that because I am now like this week I've been, instead of using the dropper, I just drink it out of the bottle straight. They also have Sebede smokables and flour, keef, pre-rolls. They have Sebede coffee and Sebede fudge. They have all sorts of gummies, some for focus, some for relaxation, some for sleep, some for just straight Sebede. They've got gels now, new gel caps for your Sebede. A little more time release and let you eat them in the morning with your vitamins. If you need to relax, if there are things that are causing you stress.
Like the news.
Exactly. Great company, great product. All their product is third-party tested. They use integrated pest management. They don't use any pesticide. They use great farming practices. They practice regenerative farming in conjunction with practices they got from the University of Vermont. They have their movement partners. They've donated thousands upon thousands of dollars to things like strike relief funds and Give Directly and carceral reform and food pantries. They've been involved in mutual aid in the wake of floods. There's more flooding up in Vermont now. They're up near Burlington. Just an all-around great company, great product. SunsetLakeSebede.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST. You will get 20% off. Check it out. And now for the show.
Every day is Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, July 12th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ryan Grimm, reporter, co-founder of the new venture Drop Site News, also co-host of Counterpoints, will be joining us. Meanwhile, despite making it through a NATO press conference, calls for Biden stepping aside are coming from inside the House, both the House and the White House. Netanyahu moves the goalposts once more as a ceasefire nears a deal. Biden administration announces $1.7 billion to subsidize electric vehicles made in the U.S. This is a big story. EU charges Twitter, or X, or whatever they call it now, with major violations of its Digital Service Act. They're coming after the blue checks as sham verification. Sorry, Emma. AT&T reveals massive 2022 data breach. Soaring heat emergencies in the U.S. are threatening our hospital system stability. Meanwhile, University of Houston poll shows Colin Allred nearly within the margin of error of Ted Cruz for the Texas Senate race. IRS collects $1 billion in back taxes from high wealth taxpayers And NATO pledges defensive support, but nothing for a Ukrainian counteroffensive. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Emma Vigland. It is
Casual Friday.
Casual Friday, and I've decided to really casual it up by including a little bit of paint on my
Oh, it's on this little white.
I got a little paint all over the place. Yes, we're just getting an IM about the there's floods in Vermont almost like a year to the day from and that is the last vestiges of Hurricane, was it Beryl?
Mm-hmm.
And more floods there. I think at least 2 people have died up in Vermont. Meanwhile, and we'll play a clip of this. What's going on in Houston right now is both nuts and probably a good sign. I mean, not good as in like prescriptive, but accurate sign of what's to come in the coming years when we're talking about climate change. Their power grid went out because of Beryl, but you got sweltering heat and you've got literally 1.2 million people who don't have electricity. And down the road, we're going to see the grids get knocked out because of heat.
And this is a recurring problem in Texas, too, because of the way that they've privatized their grid. Yeah. And
Indeed.
There's no... And another time when a prominent leader from Texas, this time it's the governor as opposed to Ted Cruz, is literally on the vacation in the middle of a massive crisis.
I don't know how Abbott maintains, frankly, but I guess Texas is a different place. All right, let's get into this. We're obviously going to be talking about this with Ryan Grimm. Last night, President Biden gave a press conference to mark the ending of this NATO conference. The press conference ostensibly was to mark the end of the NATO conference. Everyone knows that it was really sort of like an opportunity for Biden to attempt to change the narrative that it's been around for a while, but that got cemented during the debate, which is he is simply does not have the physical or perhaps mental ability to both campaign and be president.
Or serve a second term, for that matter.
I mean, I think, for people who are asking for him to step down, to be replaced by Harris, the idea that he would step down after he was president would be perfectly fine as well. The issue is, can he win this campaign against Donald Trump? And so this is there's 2 orders to this problem. One is what he does at any given moment. And 2 is it enough to be perceived as enough to convince voters? Because you could look at his performance last night and say, I mean, it wasn't great, but you don't need to necessarily, if you look at this in a vacuum, it wasn't great, but do you need to pull the fire alarm?
Right.
But the problem is it's not in a vacuum. What else is in that space is what he did on the debate stage, his age, the changes people notice with him, and the fact that the press is going to constantly ask him about every single gaffe, every single moment. And the entire campaign is going to be focused on him as opposed to being a Trump referendum. Here is the last question. We're not going to play the gaffes that he made. I think those are sort of like,
he called Zelensky Putin, introduced him as Putin. He, in the answer to the first question,
right after that,
he did. But then in the answer to the first question, he called Kamala Harris Vice President Trump. Yeah, I mean,
because
you don't.
The question was, could she be Trump? I mean, like, honestly, if we were held to that standard, again, in a vacuum, wouldn't have a show anymore.
Yeah, right.
But here is the end of the question, because this is interesting for two things. One indicates that this story is simply not going to go away. We cannot control the entire world press from these desks that we sit at. And
it's right for them to ask. I'm sorry. Like, this is legitimate. He hasn't apparently been at a full cabinet meeting since October 2nd. That was before the Hamas attack. This is not tenable.
Legitimate, illegitimate. These questions are going to be asked. That's the function of our press. That's the way things work. You know, it's like arguing against gravity.
Yeah.
But this also, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think there's a little bit of wiggle room in his answer here.
You earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that. Mr. President. Okay. Thanks.
This ends tonight's press conference.
Okay. So the question for him is not whether Harris has a better chance than him, and that's fine, I guess. The question is whether he has an opportunity. And I'm holding in my hand NBC reporting that came out like hours before this, saying that there are insiders in the campaign who are now saying there's no path for him to have a victory.
Right.
Now, recall, he did not say that God Almighty had to come down and tell him this. He has now opened the door to maybe his campaign advisor saying this. And as astute as Hunter may be, Hunter does not have the polling that the people on the campaign do. So this is, and whether he's conscious of it or not, this is an opening for him to come back and say, my advisors have said there is no path for me to victory. And I said that if there was no path for me to victory, then I would step down as your candidate. And I could do, now maybe I'm wish casting here, but it's definitely different than I said before. You're not God wish-casting. Almighty tells me,
Sam, you're not wish casting. I mean, we're at this point where the momentum just keeps ramping up. There was a very, vague statement put out by Hakeem Jeffries about their meeting where he said he came to him with the caucus's, quote, conclusions. Reporting this morning out of the New York Times by Ken Vogel, who's on the beat about donations, said that Biden's largest super PAC, Future Forward, roughly $90 million in pledged donations, is now frozen, according to these donors, if he remains at the top of the ticket, and that includes multiple 8-figure commitments. And then just like from a pure and also Jim Hines last night came out and said nothing that the press conference did would have changed my mind. I think he should step down.
All right, we'll play that clip later. Yep.
We'll play that clip later. But just from a political perspective, I know I was really surprised to see people say that press conference went okay. I watched the whole thing and I found it hard to follow for the most part, and also unsettling when he kept doing that whisper thing. It's hard to wait. Why? Come on, and he kept anyway.
Why do you say that? It's Joe Biden and the Yin Yang twins.
Anyway, yeah. Someone said he sounded like the Yin Yang twins. Like, from a pure political perspective, it's not great politics when everyone looks at your candidate and feels sad.
Yeah.
He's a bummer. He's anxiety-inducing to watch. People don't, even if they like him, and we see a majority of Biden supporters now think he should step aside, according to ABC polling from yesterday. Over 60% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents think he should step aside. So, the problem is just that you need to inspire, and he makes people want to crawl into a hole and not think about him because it makes them upset, even if they're prone to liking him.
Also, I'll just say best chance to beat Trump should be the requirement, not I have to guarantee lose before I make a shift here, but whatever.
All right. Well, we'll talk more about this with Ryan Grimm in just a moment. He has announced publicly that he has left The Intercept. We will talk a little bit about that as well. He and Jeremy Scahill essentially have, I think at one point, and I think this is public, they made an attempt to approach the board of directors of The Intercept to have more control by the journalists of The Intercept as opposed to sort of the business people. And he and Scahill went with a proposal. They said no. And then I think something to the effect of like Grimm and Scahill looked at each other and said, you know what, we've already lined up the ducks here. We could just go do that ourselves. We will talk a little bit about that. And of course, Joe Biden and a piece that Ryan and both Scahill, some of their inaugural pieces for Drop Site News in a moment. But before we do, word from our sponsor. This episode of The Majority Report brought to you by Manakora honey, also known as honey with superpowers. This honey has been a go-to for me for, I don't know, a couple of years now, because you really can't use any other honey after you have tried this honey. It is a completely different experience. It is not the stuff you get from the bears. It's not the stuff that gets sent in from China. It's not even like your local honey. Manakora honey is a single origin honey. It's got the texture almost of caramel. It is supercharged with antioxidants and prebiotics. It has 3 times more of those things than your average honey. Manakora honey supports immunity. It aids digestion. It boosts energy. It helps balance inflammation. It is a game changer. All you need is 1 to 3 teaspoons a day, but I challenge you to only have 1 to 3 teaspoons a day. It has a natural antibacterial compound called MGO. It is found only in Manuka honey. And you can get different levels of that concentration of that MGO in the honey. If you're looking for something simple and delicious to add to your wellness routine, we have found it for you. Now, it's easier than ever to try Manakora honey with the starter kit. Just head to manakora.com/majority to get $25 off. The starter kit comes with an MGO 850 plus Manuka honey, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, plus a guidebook. Now, I love the jar and the squeeze bottle, but the extra pack of compostable honey sticks is perfect for whenever you're on the go. You can bring them with you when you're traveling or you need a quick snack running errands. They are the perfect energy boost if you're out for a run or at the gym. Also, amazing for your kids' lunch boxes when they go to camp. They want something sweet. Here's something sweet that's also good for your immunity, your immune system. And then, they're compostable too. So, kids with throwing stuff away is tough. That's manukora.com/majority. Get $25 off a starter kit. This is the ultimate honey. Indulge and try some honey with superpowers from Manakora right now. Quick break. And we'll be talking to Ryan Grimm. Someone just said, Sam, the way you pronounce Carmel is the impetus I needed to call for your resignation from the Majority Report. We'll be right back in just a moment. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Joining us now from Netroots Nation, Ryan Grimm, reporter at his newly founded venture, co-founded, multiple founded venture, Dropsite News, co-host of Counterpoints. Ryan, welcome back to the program.
And can we pause while everybody goes to dropsitenews.com and signs up to get barraged by our emails? All right. There. Everybody good? You got it?
No.
Okay,
I have no problem spending a little more time promoting your site. I mean, the work that you guys have done over the years at The Intercept, really important work. You made this point when you were bragging in your newsletter that you are an award-winning journalist, but yet you have not ended up at Punchbowl or at Politico or Axios or any of these sites. I mean, you're at Netroots Nation. There's, I would imagine, to the extent that there's anybody from any of those outfits there, I doubt they are, but to the extent that they are, they're there just sort of like looking at the animals in the zoo. As far as they're concerned.
If Politico's here, it's to try to catch somebody saying something, like off message, and just light it up. Yeah,
indeed. And Scahill's done amazing work for at least 20 years, starting at Democracy Now!, if I remember correctly, and at The Nation. And so I can't encourage people to go and support this endeavor enough. I know you're bringing over some more people from The Intercept. I know The Intercept doesn't know who they are yet, so we don't need to be explicit about that. But
and yes, and Emma wouldn't understand this because she's not Gen X like us. But the bragging that I put in that newsletter that you mentioned, it was hard to do. But the point is a key one. It's like, because we won this Pulitzer at the Huffington Post, because we won the Pope, because Jeremy was an Oscar nominee for his documentary about his book, like those credentials give us entry into the kind of mainstream media ecosystem, such that when we report something, they listen. So that when we reach out to comment,
authority,
they respond.
An appeal to authority. Now, I'm not gonna to begrudge you that. I think it's good. I mean, I'm really excited to read more of your stuff because the early work that you have to launch the site, the Hamas interview, and then also this UAW story. You're off swinging, Ryan.
A couple of doubles off the fence there.
I want to talk about that Borofsky story in a minute, dealing with the UAW. But first, let's just start. You're at Netroots Nation. I haven't been in several years, but back in the day when I think we were the first, the Majority Report may have been the first program ever to broadcast from Netroots Nation back when it was yearly co's 20 years ago now, I guess, in 2000.
Yeah, this is the 19th. Yep.
All right, so it was 20.
I just saw that on their brochure. This is the 19th. Yeah.
And in Vegas, how does this one start? I think you were at that one, if I remember correctly, or at least 2006, maybe.
Or one of the biggest ones. Yeah.
Yeah. How does it compare?
I think it's similar to how it has been over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, in the sense that it kind of transitioned into almost a kind of like professional left gathering for kind of people that work in like progressive campaigns, digital media, consulting firms that work with like progressive clients, rather because the blogosphere, such as it was, like doesn't really exist anymore. Like Coast is the last kind of is there anything left from the blogosphere?
That's good. I mean,
Huffington Post is still going.
Atrios,
that's true.
And Hullabaloo.
Atrios is going. Hullabaloo's going.
Digby, yeah.
Yeah. But there used to be, every state had a whole bunch of bloggers that would come together and that would cover their own capital and uncover the corruption there, and be ripping apart the proto Tea Party Republicans, which were then proto MAGA Republicans. So it kind of feels a little more professional. But you look around and I'm sure if a Republican came here, they'd be like, "You call this professional? This is a bunch of crunchy hippies." Right. But yeah, but they show up on time for their Zooms and deliver their work product. So.
Okay, I'm getting reports that Ryan's audio is not good on YouTube. Maybe we can switch you over to the computer.
I mean,
Okay,
we can
we'll
try
try
that
that.
one here.
Yeah, let's just try it.
Input. We'll go to the built-in.
Behind the scenes look for everybody here.
Oh, actually,
Bradley's going to prompt you here.
my iPhone is connected.
Oh,
Nope.
we lost
I don't
Ryan.
think-
Maybe we should cut to a break quick and do this.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Ryan, I sent you.
All right, we're back. I think we got a little bit better audio. I'm not sure that we're going to be synced up in the same way, but we will deal with that.
Let's see how this goes.
So more institutional. There's no blogosphere, and you guys are there obviously to get the word out of your new endeavor. I want to talk about one story before we get to the Biden stuff, which of course is like, I imagine it's dominating the conversation there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you can say that.
What this story about Neil Barofsky, and I remember him from being the inspector general, I think, from the TARP program, and being one of the people who came out and spoke against Geithner's whole plan in trying to rescue, well, for Geithner's perspective, the banking industry, and from everybody else's perspective, all the homeowners who were underwater on their homes. Borowski seems to have overstepped his boundaries in monitoring the UAW. Tell us about that story.
Yeah, like he was a kind of a heroic figure back during the Wall Street bailout years. Like that, he was one of the champions that people were looking to going after Wall Street, and Wall Street was constantly complaining that Borowski was just being kind of too rough on them, and it was absolutely delightful to watch. This around, he actually had so the UAW has a federal monitor because of these corruption scandals in the recent past that led to 2 consecutive presidents of the UAW getting federal prison sentences for corruption. And so in lieu of UAW itself, like getting broken up and prosecuted, it was put under this consent decree, which means that the federal government for a period of time has this like unchecked power to reform the thing. And the first part of it worked great. Like they forced the UAW to allow the rank and file to elect their president directly. And what that did is it led to the election of a left-wing reformer, Sean Fain, who then led the stand-up strike against the Big Three, the six-week-long strike that brought the automakers to their knees and delivered absolutely kind of record-breaking contract gains for the auto workers. And in the wake of that, he and the UAW have been able to expand their organizing into previously non-union places, battery plants, electric vehicles, etc. So that part was working, and he had a pretty good relationship with Neil Barofsky, the monitor. Then after October 7th, that changed. So on November 30th, December 1st, the UAW became the first major union to call for a ceasefire. Borofsky, as he later told Sean Fain, had kind of attended some of the protests in New York and found them to be offensive and anti-Semitic. Borofsky is a major outspoken supporter of Israel and has been for many years. So Sean Fain was scheduled to do a press conference with Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Ro Khanna, other members of Congress calling for a press conference in mid-December. And Borofsky called Sean Fain the night before to tell him, that he thought that this was a terrible idea, that this whole thing was anti-Semitic, and that what really wasn't the UAW's place to be getting involved in this situation. And he said, "Look, this was a vote of the executive board. This was our locals weighed in on this. The UAW sponsored the March on Washington. MLK's March on Washington. The UAW was for, was against apartheid South Africa. You can argue about whether the UAW ought to do these things, but the UAW has been maybe the most kind of socially conscious major union of any of them. So this was like well within what they do. And also he said, look, this is really not appropriate. And Borowski said, I'm only calling you in a strictly personal capacity, not as the federal monitor. And he said,
that is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. I mean, people could take issue with what positions the UAW has, but the idea that you're the monitor and you're calling as just a personal, what kind of relation are they, buddies? What context? This is.
I mean, I guess they text, but
that just seems extraordinary.
Their only relationship is this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why?
And so then in February.
Yeah. Well, no, continue, because I'm
February,
curious as to why we're finding out about this.
Yeah. So in February, then there's another board meeting, the quarterly board meeting. So he didn't usually go to the board meetings, and he missed the one where they approved the ceasefire resolution. So in February, he came to that quarterly meeting, and he weighs in as the federal monitor at the meeting. He zooms in remotely, and he says, "Look, I've heard from the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, thinks that what one of your locals here in New York was doing is wrong, and that the ceasefire is giving fuel to anti-Semitism." He said, "I've gone to protests, and I've seen the UAW wheel." He said, "It pains me to see the UAW wheel being held up by protesters at these pro-Palestine or anti-war demonstrations." And the board confronted him back and said, "Neil, this is completely inappropriate. We have an agenda here. We're not this is not his job. This is not anywhere within your remit. You're not on our political team. This is the members' call. You're not a UAW member." And so they then sent their lawyer sent him a letter, kind of re-expressing those thoughts. After Borowski also sent them an email, because he got a complaint from the ADL about something that happened with a local that called for a ceasefire, and he forwarded that ADL complaint to the board and said, "These are very serious concerns that should be addressed." And he confirmed in that letter, and I previously expressed these concerns to Sean back in December, directly in a personal capacity, he added. And so the UAW lawyer wrote back, saying, "This is just, Neil, this is insanely inappropriate. You have to stop doing this." So then 6 days later, Borowski sends the union this sweeping demand for records, saying that he wants all text messages, between all of these people from February 12th, which is around the time the ADL out to Borowski, February 12th to February 23rd, which was when the union sent this letter to Borowski. He wants all text messages that Sean Fain sent between his lawyers and his his senior staff, and all emails and all records, and also a sweeping set of other documents that would have added up to hundreds of thousands of records, and said he was going to investigate something that had been raised at the last board meeting. Basically, at that same meeting where Borowski was complaining about the ceasefire, Sean Fain had stripped the secretary's treasurer of some of her official duties. They were in a dispute about organizing tactics, and it played out not behind the scenes, but at the board meeting, and put to a vote, and the board moved yes, we're with Sean Fain. We disagree with what the secretary treasurer did. Secretary treasurer complained to Borowski that it was unfair, and so he said, "I'm opening a federal investigation into this situation, and I want all of these records." And so they have spent the last 4 months kind of in court fighting about whether they have to turn over all of these records. And so and Borowski just opened announced that he'd opened a new investigation into Sean Fain, and so he kind of keeps doing this, and so I think that's why we have learned about the kind of background here.
Yeah, I had seen the stuff about the investigations, and then had seen reports of that first. Is there no appeal process? Is does Neil Borowski have total, carte blanche to do whatever he wants? I mean, because there's no. First of all, you don't send an official notice that you shouldn't be protesting about a ceasefire, and then reference a supposed personal conversation, right? Right. That's proof That's like Elon Musk saying to Don Lemon, like, there's no contract, but the contract's off. Like, you know, like you can't,
Yes.
you can't do both those things and maintain them. But is there no, does Neil Barofsky not have a boss or an appeal process for what he's been doing?
His boss would be Judge David Lawson, who's a Clinton appointee at the Eastern District of Detroit. We reached out to him for comment, and they said, hey, we don't have a press person. We'll get to this as soon as we can. They have been basically complaining to the judge. Like, the judge appointed Barofsky, and so the judge could weigh in and say, okay, this is overboard. So the Department of Justice could in perhaps on one side or the other. They declined to comment for the article as well. They said although they were declining to comment for now, which I thought was kind of interesting, something along those lines. So yes, they'd have to go to the judge, but the judge basically has unchecked power because the union gave away all their power,
Right.
in exchange for not getting.
And we should say they did this before
broke it up.
Fain. This is all of this stuff predates
Right,
Fain.
exactly.
Interesting story.
Right, and Barofsky could have wrapped it up within the boxes of the consent decree. After Fain was elected, after he kind of reformed the union, after he won the big stand-up strike, it was well within Barofsky's mandate to say, "We're good. Like, this was a big success. You know, we're done with this." And UAW is now, no, you're like an owl that can go fly again. But so take them to court, prosecute them. He can do a lot under his mandate unless the judge steps in.
Did you say an owl that can go fly free again?
Yeah, let's say the UAW broke its wing and was brought in by the Federal Monitor and nursed back to health.
Is that some
You're walking
is
out
that
the
an idiom I'm
backyard.
not aware of? Like, why an owl?
Go. I just made it right now.
Okay. All right. I was just checking on that. Like, I wasn't sure if that was like an old union idiom. Like, we're an owl.
No, I'm dropping new material here.
It's like that Mr. Take This Broken Wing song.
Yeah, no, I got
Yes.
it. All right. So let's talk about what is dominating the news these days. I don't know if you've been following this at all, but apparently Joe Biden had a bad debate a couple of weeks ago that sort of cemented some people's concerns, and that he was incapable of mounting a vigorous campaign against Donald Trump. And it has been exacerbated by, at the very least, internal polling in New York. You know, you could see when that poll dropped, because within hours, Richie Torres did like almost a full 180 on where he was on the president stepping down. Ryan in the 18th district, I think it is now,
Pat Ryan.
used to be the 9th,
Yeah.
Pat Ryan. He won the special election 2 years ago, and then won again the past he won a special election and an election in 2022, almost like within like 2 months of each other. He called for Biden to step down. It's a lot of these frontline Democrats are the first to freak out. What? Let me ask you this. Let me start this. What's your take on why we're seeing frontline Democrats do this, but like the squad, AOC, they come out and they say, Biden says he's the candidate, so I support him.
So as you've probably noticed from your own viewership, there remains a very intensely dedicated group of Biden supporters who very much resent that Biden is kind of being pushed aside by the New York Times and the elite media and the senior Democrats coming in at the last minute and doing this. So there is that base of support. The context here is that Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar both are facing significant primary challenges back at home. Both of them are taking the same approach that Summer Lee took to beat her primary challenger, which is not, I am a firebrand radical squad member who's going to burn the system down and build utopia in its place. It is, I am a good Democrat who helped Joe Biden enact, his Inflation Reduction Act and the rest of the Biden Democratic agenda. The attack that works from a squad inside Democratic parties is that they're disloyal Democrats. Democratic primary voters want loyalty. And you got Ilhan Omar running an ad with like Biden saying nice things about Ilhan Omar. You've got Cori Bush, who is showing and tying herself to the Democratic agenda, and saying that like her opponent is working with Republicans and Trump donors, because a lot of AIPAC money comes from people who also give to Trump, and so they're forcing the primary debate into this partisan lane because it works with partisans. To then come out and say that Joe Biden should step down complicates, I think, that effort that they're making. And the only way that would apply to AOC is if you think that she's doing it on behalf of the rest of the squad members.
It's a fairly common tactic where if one senator needs help, their fellow senator will take a position that provides essentially some space for them to move. You could argue that's what AOC is doing here as well. And I will say this:
the other theory
I
is that
saw in the Bowman race, the ad I saw more than any other ad, over and over again, was Latimer accusing Bowman of not voting for these Biden programs. I mean, it was essentially like he's not the attack that you're describing was exactly what Latimer was doing.
And Bowman's response to that was, I opposed that infrastructure bill, tactically in support of his broader agenda, which was true, but is a difficult argument to land, and it makes we kind of championed that strategy. That to see it kind of used against Bowman years later was kind of a twist of the knife.
Yep.
Right. And can you, I mean, the reporting this morning from the New York Times that Biden's top super PAC, the largest one, Future Forward, has $90 million that was pledged to it that they're freezing if Biden remains at the top of the ticket. You have the George Clooney op-ed, that I think there's a part of that fuels Biden's narrative that this is elites that are causing him or asking him to step aside. But the reality is quite different, because the polling makes it quite clear that it's a majority of Democrats, like 62% or something like that, or Democratic leaning voters from ABC, Ipsos, Washington Post. And then 54% of Biden supporters say he should step aside. So how is that getting translated within the Democratic Party? Because it's actually an odd situation where it's both Democratic elites, it's actually moderates, centrists, or conservative Democrats, I'd say, like Adam Smith, with a lot of weight within the party. And then also, generally, when you poll the American public, they want Biden to step aside.
Yeah, it's like his remaining base is the squad. Like that's it's like the squad and some diehard kind of Democratic, members of the grassroots base for sure. Like that's who probably hate the squad. So like that's the coalition that's left. Adam Smith really nailed it in that interview. If you saw it, like who's Joe Biden think he is, complaining about elites dictating who's going to be the nominee? Like nobody ever publicly, who is of Smith's ilk, says publicly the truth, which is that Biden finished 4th in Iowa, 5th in New Hampshire, got waxed in Nevada, and was losing to Bernie in South Carolina coming out of Nevada. He was losing nationally among black voters to Bernie coming right out of Nevada. And the entire elite coalesced. This is Adam Smith saying it. Like the entire elite coalesced around Biden, elevated him to the nomination, and then he spent the rest of the election in his basement in Wilmington because COVID had hit. So the audacity to then complain that the elites are out there picking the nominee, like you were okay with it,
right? I mean, we're talking Clyburn, and Obama were the two biggest sort of like linchpins.
Buttigieg, Klobuchar.
Yeah. Let's play this clip from Jim Himes. This was last night after the press conference, because the press conference, I think, was like in a vacuum. No one would have paid attention to it. In a vacuum, no one would have said like, "Oi," he's rambling a little bit at times, but he also has some command of some of this stuff. It's just that he appears to be old. But none of this is in a vacuum anymore, and that's the problem. Here's Jim Himes on Alex Wagner.
Thank you for joining me. We'll get right to it. What did you see tonight and in recent days that leads you to believe that Joe Biden should step aside?
Yeah, it's really not about tonight. And one of the really kind of sick aspects of this moment is that we are watching every speech, every rally, every debate, and saying, how did he do today? And that's just not the way to think about the presidency of the United States. And look, this is a really hard moment for Democrats. And it's a hard moment for Democrats because loyalty and love and emotion are really important in politics. And by the way, they're probably no more important than, there's probably no one for whom that's more important than, the storytelling Irishman, Joe Biden. And they're really important to politics. It's why, union halls erupt in ecstasy. It's why rallies are unbelievable. It's why people cry when they remember Barack Obama. And that's good. It is good. The problem is it can be taken to an extreme. It is loyalty and loyalty alone, unthinking loyalty, that leads 70 million Americans to continue to back an adjudicated felon, rapist, sexual assaulter who has promised an authoritarian regime. That's an excess of loyalty. And at the end of the day, those things that are so important to politics must make way, as hard as it is, to a very simple question, which is, can we win this race and save our democracy? And it is so unsexy and so unromantic to say, well, what about the polls? What about, the Cook report? Completely dashes the poetry of campaigning. But the hard reality is, and I'm far from the only Democrat who believes this, that the numbers, the trajectory, what Americans feel in their bones right now suggest not only that Joe Biden would lose this race, but that he or we would lose the Senate and the House. And the stakes are so high that we need to set aside that loyalty and that poetry and that romance and the charge of the Light Brigade, and we all go down together in favor of some really hard-nosed analysis about whether this is the way forward. And
we get the gist here, and the point is that it's true. He's not going to give a public interview or speech from now until the election where he's not going to be scrutinized for every single flub. And, it's not like the guy didn't have flubs, 20 years ago. He was sort of famous for gaffes and whatnot. And, I just mispronounced Carmel. But the problem is none of this is in a vacuum, Carmel, and none of it's in a vacuum. And this is just going to continue.
We exist in the context of all of which came before us, and
we can be unburdened by what has been. Which
is a contradiction. You can't. How can you believe both things? Like you either exist in the context of all that came before, or you can be unburdened by
and then be unburdened. Well, and then she's saying that you can move forward. See, this is honestly the beautiful poetry of being on the island with the coconuts on it. I mean, we can be unburdened by what has been. We can be unburdened by this damn nightmare we've been living in the past 2 weeks, and just let go.
We could be unburdened by that.
I am, we're joking a little bit about this, but I do just think every day that he stays in this race, it's a day that we should be focusing on Donald Trump. And I think a majority of Democrats are beginning to understand that. And the bar is so low for him to have some sort of coherent performance. I don't I
One
don't
thing-
understand what the coverage last night felt like. It was almost manufactured to get him to feel good and feel like he's king in NATO, so he can go out and stop dragging down the rest of the Democratic ticket with his own selfishness.
And for people who haven't gotten there yet themselves, like one way to think about it is to think about Donald Trump. This is a world historic narcissist. Like there may have never been on the face of the earth a narcissist as extreme as he is. And he gets all of his life force, his energy, from attention. Donald Trump has been deathly quiet the last 2 weeks. Do you know what force it takes Donald Trump to be quiet?
Right.
You just try to imagine you're Donald Trump and you have the opportunity to have the entire world's attention, the thing that you need more than anything else. And you're willing to forego that.
The only time,
you just
Ryan,
want Biden. You don't want to get in Biden's way.
I just have to add to your point, what he's been breaking his silence about has been to yell at George Clooney for criticizing Biden. And then Don Jr. comes out and he says, I think you should stay in the race a little longer. The Heritage Foundation's putting out this stuff that, they'll sue to keep Biden off the ballot. The ballots have not been printed yet. Or on the ballot. The ballots have not been printed yet. Trump has not selected his vice president. Legally, he's not the nominee. We are just as much the nominees legally right now as Biden is, because the convention has not happened yet. So it's just a lot of, it's almost like the Pied Piper strategy. They want him badly I mean, it's not exactly like that, but they want to run against Biden. That's the reality of the situation.
That certainly is what they're signaling. They feel pretty confident that they can beat Kamala Harris as well. And now you're getting to a situation where tons of Democratic leaders are nervous that if they are seen as pushing Biden aside and Kamala Harris loses, that then they get blamed. If they just let Biden take the L, then that's on Biden and not on them. So the kind of cynical effort to just figure out what is less bad for you is starting to take hold, which though it is. If they really believed that 2024 was the end of democracy, then they wouldn't be worried about small things like that. But
you wouldn't have a
whatever
it is, a collective action problem. Everybody would just say, what are you hearing? What is your sense of where this is at? One of the things that, in our, the wish casting that we're doing off air is is it possible that Biden will they're going to bring him numbers over the next couple of days, and some of his, the real issue is obviously Hunter wants to keep him in the race. Hunter has a very strong vested interest in having somebody who might be able to pardon him, just say. But there are campaign people who are going to have to their futures are also, at stake here and if they ride this to the bottom of the ocean, they will never come up from the bottom of the ocean. So it seems like they could possibly end up walking into his office and saying, here are the numbers. You called for it the other night. If someone shows you the numbers, here's the numbers. There's no path. Do they wait? And then 15 minutes after Donald Trump takes the stage in Milwaukee, go and make the announcement, or is that not enough pomp for Biden?
Pelosi, you saw her basically publicly saying that she wanted to push him out after the NATO conference. She deliberately went on television.
Morning Joe.
And she kept, and it was this delightful Pelosi interview where she says, look, this is a decision that Joe Biden has to make. But he shouldn't make it until, after the NATO conference. And the person says, well, he says he's already made a decision. And she says, this is a decision that Joe Biden
It's amazing.
It's no. There's a decision they have to make. It's a different one than the one you made. And you've got to make it. And you've got this weekend to make it. Yes, I think you're exactly right. That they go to him and if the polling hangs in there for him in the swing states, or rebounds or whatever, then all bets are off. But they will go to him with these numbers saying, look, We have you down 9 in Pennsylvania. We have Tammy Baldwin up 5 or 6 in Wisconsin, and you down like 8. Like, we have you down in Nevada, down in Arizona, down in Michigan, like neck and neck in New Jersey. Like, these are the numbers, and you can't win.
What concerns me, Ryan?
He opened the door to that at the press.
He did.
Yes, we played
we
that
open
up
with
front.
that.
Yeah.
But what concerns me is if the numbers are in any way ambiguous, the frightening part is that they're not going to get any better because he can't campaign. Like, they may get temporarily better, but I can't see the trend reversing in a way where he has like a real path. So that's the concern, is if they're not straight with him about a broader trend. Like this Marist poll today was more rosy, but when you take an aggregate, it's painting the same picture. You know, I'm hopeful that he's actually that there's people behind the scenes that are penetrating this team that he's so carefully curated.
And what I also don't quite get about Hunter Biden is that if he decides not to run, the entire country would almost be like annoyed at him if he didn't pardon Hunter Biden. Like, this is your son, you love him.
Right.
It was like it's a gun charge, like for like paperwork gun charge. Like, the Republicans would be shocked if he did not pardon Hunter on his way out. Hunter's more likely to go to prison if Biden's reelected, because if Biden's
Right, because
reelected,
Biden's can't afford to
keep up
pardon
the
him at that
pretense.
point.
But if you're retiring, like, come on, Hunter,
Well,
like, think.
This could
Now,
be
maybe
Hunter,
thinks the price of his paintings goes down.
or maybe Hunter's playing a double blind game or something where he pushes him to stay in the race because he doesn't care about a pardon. But since you're now getting out of the race, Dad,
You know what? I really wanted you to stay.
I never asked
was
you for
willing
a
to go to
pardon.
jail for it, but yeah.
Do you have any sense of like, are you hearing anything in terms of would it automatically be Kamala Harris? Are you are we going to have a debate now? Are you one of those people who want the mini primary and the?
Oh, you didn't read my newsletter on this? I was one of the first ones out on that. On
Taylor
that point.
Swift, you were floating her to moderate these debates.
I did not float Taylor Swift, but I did say that you don't understand this country's culture if you don't understand the role and influence of reality TV, and that people understand reality TV as a proxy for a democratic like world in which they are participating and have a real connection to these people who are on the screens, and that undertaking some of those insights and giving people a facsimile of participatory democracy through an open convention would give people what they're hungering for in a way that just saying, you know what, okay, we lied to you for the last couple of years about Biden. We're now listening to you, and Kamala Harris is going to be the nominee. Because if there was an open convention, Kamala Harris has like a 90% chance of winning it anyway. So, like, why not, like, at least
I hear you.
Make it look like she did something to win.
Wait a second. All right. So two things. One, do you think that they've been lying for 3 years, or do you think that there was a big drop off? Because I mean,
both.
I mean, because my sense is the idea that they scheduled this debate for June, unprecedented to have a debate prior to actually them being the nominees.
It shows a level of ignorance.
Well, it suggests to me that they thought right now we'd all be talking about Donald Trump being a lunatic, and this would start the beginning of the campaign. Right. I cannot imagine that anybody anticipated this would have been the outcome. And so I think
that's true, but I think the public has been so convinced that he's too old for so long.
Yeah.
That is not a very good defense. Like, that we were wrong about it. You were right. So, like, you're either poor judges of the situation, or you were lying about it.
There may have been motivated reasoning, right? Like, I mean, and them thinking that he can get through a debate. I mean, it's Donald Trump.
I went back and read some of my 2019 debate coverage. and I used the word, I think, at the top of one of the stories that his performance was staggeringly incoherent. This is 2019.
Biden.
Remember, he was he was
bled
asked,
from his eye. Do you remember that moment when he bled from his eye? Yeah.
And started talking about how the problem with black kids, they don't listen to record players. The family doesn't play record players enough. It was like just
listen fat. That
staggeringly
happened too.
incoherent bonkers,
Yeah.
like stuff where you're like, I think I know what he's trying to say, and it's weird, but I don't quite know.
I also think you could find that from like 2008, frankly. Too.
Right, but back in 2008,
he said it with more
you could
confidence.
follow a loopy. Right.
Yeah, he said it with more confidence. I mean,
but Trump, but Trump does that. That's the point. Is like Trump says things that don't make sense, but he says it with confidence. So that's literally the only thing that we're. Politicians lie, and people expect politicians to lie, but you have to be able to communicate and inspire
the nonverbal cues.
And Biden has a problem with that. I'm just saying, this is what I said earlier. People feel bummed out when they look at him. They're either feeling anxious about him messing up, or they feel bummed out, or they tune out and they don't want to deal with it, or they think the Democrats are lying to me just like the Republicans were about this guy. They're propping him up. It's wrong. There's no positive spin we can get, like the sympathy vote. That could transfer to Kamala if he hands her the nomination.
I would just take issue on the Trump point. It is pretty coherent that you would rather be electrocuted than jump in and get eaten by a shark, right? I mean, that's fair.
I mean,
I
cooler
feel like
death.
with a shark, you'd have a chance, though.
Yeah.
You'd have a fighting chance. You punch him in the nose.
But,
you can't.
obviously, Trump doesn't feel like he trusts his skills against a shark.
Well, all right. Well, that is, I think, fair enough. I think then
indicative of his cowardice.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that should be. They should make hay out of that. Let me just push back a little bit on the open convention thing. I think what you're saying is I think there's some truth maybe to this, but I would need evidence that there's going to be some type of backlash to the vice president, the vice presidential nominee taking the top of the ticket. Like, where is that backlash coming from? Like what problem are we trying to solve with Harris? With an open convention, which
the problem, I don't think it's necessarily backlash. I think it is a disconnect between the Democratic Party and the public, and a lack of legitimacy that the party has. And if they could take a week or two and have this
because 436 people that we don't know who they are, isn't
it like 3,900?
The delegates?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, 3,900. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
right.
They're pretty good. These are pretty rank and file activists. Just Democratic, people who devote their lives to the Democratic Party. I think they'd pick whoever was polling best against Trump at the time. I think it would be that simple.
Well, can I also say that I think listening to the voters on Biden stepping aside also demonstrates Democratic responsiveness. Like I think both
as an elite thing, but
but either way they can say, 3,900 delegates, who are these people? Like I'm sympathetic to your argument, Ryan. I just think that the worst option is doing nothing, signaling zero Democratic responsiveness versus the two options that we're considering here. Because as you say, the concerns about his age, it went up, among Democrats in particular, polling wise after the debate. But this was widespread beforehand, and people were broadly discontent with the choice in a way that I think like people were despondent, but it's now coming to the forefront how little people wanted these two options, honestly, generally.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If the Democrats were the one that delivered the American people's wish that it not be another Trump-Biden race, there's something to that. Yeah. But just imagine, take my earlier point, though, that Kamala Harris is almost certainly likely to win the open convention. But I don't see the debate as toxic and chaotic. I see it as democratic and vibrant. And then she comes out of it having won.
What if she doesn't? I mean,
well, then whoever beat her is even better.
But they have no campaign funds. They don't have any. They have no bank account.
You can move that money over. That's a
no. You can't move that. You can move that money over to Super PAC, but you can't move it directly into the campaign.
you can move some of it to the DNC. You can also, because money is so fungible, you can say, look, we raised $600 million. We spent $400 million. We have $200 million left. This $200 million came from these super rich donors, and we're going to just call them. In one day, like you call them all, they refund it and send it to the next one. Federal and state campaigns do that sort of thing a lot when they close one and open another. You just call the person up and you're like, look, I'm sorry, this is annoying, but can you just cancel your $10 million check?
I'd be a little nervous about 8 weeks out from the election to have somebody basically start a campaign from the ground up, or to have to transfer over to have,
but didn't the socialists like beat the fascists in France in like 2 weeks?
Well, they have a system where they have snap elections, and that's the way that it goes. Like we don't have that system here. We're running against a campaign that's been in existence for over a year, as be that as whatever shape it's in. And the idea that, and if it's just a fait accompli that she's going to be it, like, again, it's sort of just artifice, and you're not solving the problem of showing the American public that the process is democratic if it's just sort of a foregone conclusion. That's my sense, but I don't know. It would be nice to have that argument.
Let's see.
All right. Lastly, just tell us about Drop Site, just briefly, again, just a little bit, just remind us, because I'm big fans of both yours. I'm looking forward to seeing who else you guys bring over. What was going on at The Intercept?
And we're still doing the podcast. Like we had an amicable departure from Intercept. We're still doing Deconstructed. We're still doing Intercepted, though we're taking them independent, but they're gonna run the transcripts on the site over there. There's been a lot of reporting about how the Intercept went independent maybe a year and a half ago from the Omidyar network, and has just been spiraling financially. And so it was also reported that Jeremy and I came to them like with some donors and with a vision for how you could kind of revive it. And the board considered it and declined it. And so we're like, okay, well, this is how we think you can do a sustainable news organization, nonprofit news organization in this current environment. So we're just going to go do it. And that's what we're going to do. So it's dropsitenews.com. It's going to be, fairly lean, but, we envision a newsroom of 10 to 15 people, and mostly subscribers. And then also, some like what I've learned, they call people in the nonprofit space who are rich, they call them high net worth. So some 4 and 5 figure donors, who are able to give more, because investigative journalism doesn't produce, it not only is expensive, it doesn't produce enough content to just make it on algorithmic kind of money on like YouTube, like with Counterpoints or Breaking Points. It's just, at Breaking Points we'll do 8 segments a day, and each of them gets a large audience, and the revenue that comes in from that plus the premium subscribers. You can't do 8 investigative pieces a day. That's insane. We can do one a week, maybe a big story every month. So our thinking is like, if we can come in with some real big stories every now and then that shape the conversation for a little while, then that is needed. Like you need that in the kind of independent progressive media ecosystem. You need at least somebody who's doing that, and hopefully the Intercept continues doing it. But at minimum, we want to make sure that we're out there doing it.
Well, we'll put a link to Drop Site News at majority.fm, and we'll drop it into our AM Quickie to encourage people to go over and support what you're doing. And then we're going to take all your content that you produce, and we're going to do stories and videos like that about it.
That's why it's so important. So otherwise, you're just doing stories based on corporate media content.
Exactly.
You sift through like their biases to get to the reality, where it's nice to have some other material.
You don't have to tell me that. I know where my bread is buttered. Believe me. Ryan Grimm, thanks so much for your time. Have fun at the rest of Netroots, and I guess we'll see where we're at over the next week. It could be, I imagine, like, one last question. When do you think like in Biden's mind, there must be like, if he can get past the next week and a half or something, I'm speculating, then the coast is clear. When do you think that time is? Like, if he's not gone by the end of the RNC or just after it, are we just, he's the guy or what?
It's a really good question. You would think that, yeah, by the end of July at the latest. It's like, but I don't know. They keep thinking that this will go away, but then every time he appears again, it comes back. So,
well, what
but in
if
his mind, he
Pelosi
probably
goes
thinks if
public?
I do another week.
What if like Pelosi, Hakeem
Right.
Jeffries go public or something like that to expedite the situation?
It's still sticking out. I don't know, but it's a good question. It's real. What a mess. And he, domestically, let me just say, I think he's been the best president of my lifetime and then some.
That's
I got my
what
foreign policy
is.
issues.
Yeah,
Domestically, not even close, actually. Just absolute. It just sucks that. Age.
It's hard for me to separate though the Gaza stuff and this extremely selfish
It's very, very,
decision.
very hard to
Because
that, but
the reality is that if we're talking about democracy being on the ballot, every day his presence in this race undercuts the urgency the Democrats are trying to convey.
there's that too.
And I don't know. I think that's pretty gross in and of itself.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. But we'll see.
All right, folks. Ryan Grimm, appreciate you coming on.
Always.
All right, folks, we got I am here, buckets and buckets. If Biden's forced out, every Republican ad will call their opponents lying to the American people about Biden mental health. It's beyond stupid to give Republican that talking point for every single race. That is one of the silliest IMs I think we've received in a long time. Because guess what? Right now, they're rolling out those very ads as we speak. And so
let's all pretend. I'm ready to pretend for the next 4 months that everything's fine. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I would love the Republicans to be running ads against the guy who's not running. That is
and they responded to it.
And yes, in my this would be the equivalent of I mean, whatever. Somebody didn't apologize for something 8 months ago. Yes, I would encourage every Republican, if Joe Biden drops out, to cut ads about how people are lying about or did
Joe
lie about. Some people lied about Joe Biden a while back.
Some people were too charitable to the old man.
Right. You know how you undercut that is by not having Biden in the race. So then it's like, oh yeah, no, but they listened.
Responsiveness.
They were responsive. It's so silly.
Yeah, it's the liability is going to be Kamala when she's the nominee.
True. Right. Well, then we'll see. But I did see it was a funny comment. I doubt this would ever happen. But if Biden actually resigned, Kamala would be the 47th president of the United States immediately, and all of Trump's 47 merch would just completely be screwed over. So, just messing.
I don't think you want him to resign.
No, I don't think so either. But yeah.
I mean, I think I think the greatest and I think Kamala Harris has big liabilities as a campaigner. I mean, we saw it in 2020, but this is a very different moment because it will be it gets back to just a better equation on whatever your misgivings are with Harris. Your misgivings with Trump are bigger, and they don't know how to run against Kamala Harris.
Yep.
They will not have the time to figure out how to run against Kamala Harris because they'll come out and they'll start saying DEI hire. And as soon as they do that, they will have lost the race.
Good reminder.
It will take them months. Yep. And because the American public, there is a lot of racism within the American public. We obviously have systemic racism, but there's not a lot of people who, or I should say, there's not a critical mass of people who want to acknowledge their racism. And if they've got like a significant portion of the Republican Party going out there and calling her a DEI hire, it is going to there's going to be a backlash against it. And had she been the nominee a year ago, they would have churned through that process and figured out a more nuanced way to campaign against her. It's not an easy thing to campaign against anybody without enough time to figure out what's going to resonate with the American public. I mean, they struggled for a long time with Biden, and fortunately, he just got old enough and then proved that he was so old. But the crooked Joe didn't work, the wacky Joe, the sleepy Joe, even that wasn't working. It took the debate before that could really solidify. There would not be an opportunity, and this is the case for I would imagine other candidates as well, except for Harris has the advantage of people who have been campaigning for Biden necessarily also campaigning for her.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
she's been vice president, that's a pretty good thing to have on your resume if you're running for president.
And I will also, I think that I feel like it seems like a crisis, or it's an opportunity disguised as a crisis. It's still a crisis, but there's a lot of upside to exactly what Sam is saying there. And the negative partisanship about Republicans is quite high in this country. And that's why you're seeing all these Democratic Senate candidates outperform Biden right now. So I'm so much less concerned, frankly, about who the candidate is going to be at the top of the ticket. I think it will be Harris more than I am just trying to get Biden out of the way so we can start that process soon. Because once you can start campaigning, then you can begin to craft and see like what the landscape looks like in the country.
Yeah, it'd be nice to like actually have somebody who has a fast serve that can get Trump on the back foot a little bit and playing a little bit defense rather than him just, sticking his oar in whenever he feels like he needs to stir up.
She can make him play defense on abortion
Exactly.
immediately, as soon as she's able to take over for campaigning. But Biden is recalcitrant at this point. I still think it's moving. He's going to say he's strong and not dropping out right until the moment he does. Knock on wood.
That saying, may you live in interesting times. And sometimes I'd like to live in a little bit less interesting times. A little more chill.
1998.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Did someone do a...
we need you to be Mamala of the country.
Down ballot continuity for government. Kamala needs to channel President Laura Roslin. Is that a Battlestar Galactica reference? Sweet.
Wow, that's switching it up because everyone's making the easy comparison to Veep, which is she ran for president, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It was a poor showing.
That's who should be president.
Well, right. Ended up being
Julia
VP.
Louis-Dreyfus.
And then he resigned in the middle of his reelection bid, and she took over. And I guess, I forget exactly what happened, but...
I'm starting a draft JLD. This is it's going to be like America's like Ukraine, because Zelensky started out playing leader of the country.
Right, and in a show on Ukrainian television.
Oh, true.
We just need to follow suit and make Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Don't you mean President Putin?
That's right. Sam is a big Battlestar Galactica fan, so that's a good that's a well taken.
Oh, you are.
Oh my God, are you serious?
I didn't know that.
You don't fly that flag very often.
Well, I mean, the show's 20 years old.
Yeah, that's like it's their mash.
I thought you were watching it recently, though.
That's
Sam.
like Biden referencing Golda Meir over and over.
I did start to rewatch it for the third time, 6 months ago, but I aborted at that time, or 8 months ago.
How many seasons are there?
I don't know, but there's 76 episodes, and I've watched them twice.
Wow.
At least. All right, folks. I'm going to take a quick break and head to the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. If you listen to the show with any type of regularity, why not support it? Join the majorityReport.com. You can become a sustaining member. You can allow the show to survive and thrive. There are other ways to support it. Pass around our YouTube clips. Give us a good review on iTunes. Tell your friends and family. Tell your enemies. Sometimes, actually, that's even better. Tell your enemies to call in. Tell your crazy uncle to call in. Email us and tell us that your crazy uncle is going to call in, and we will make sure that crazy uncle gets through. You can also check out the AM Quickie, amquickie.com. It's free 3 times a week. I use it every day to prepare for this show on top of other things. It's a great way to get the news of the day. Also, head to the Discord, majoritydiscord.com. There is always a conversation going on there. There is 11,000 people who are members. majoritydiscord.com. You want to learn how to organize. You want to, talk about movies. You got a question about how to work an old camera. I mean, it's such an incredible resource. majoritydiscord.com. And as always, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority and you will get 10% off. Get the Majority Report blend. Emma.
On ESPN, we talked a little bit about the WNBA, the upcoming Olympics, ranked NFL, NHL, NBA teams in tiers in the offseason, youtube.com/ESPN show.
And Left Reckoning, patreon.com/Left Reckoning on Sunday, discussion with Matt McManus about his new book, The Political Theory of Liberal Socialism. It's a good getting into ideas. Matt McManus is very much the mirror image of Dave Rubin, just on our side, where he thinks that liberalism should coexist with socialism. Dave Rubin, of course, thinks that they only coexist and that's why he has to be a conservative now. But anyway, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get that discussion with Matt McManus.
See you in the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Libertarians. They're so stupid, though. Common sense says, of course.
gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-501. 1/2.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
Call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part